Backrooms, written by Will Sudick and directed by Kane Parsons, only 20 years old. I wonder if he's sick of people pointing that out. Another in a string of filmmakers who have made the jump from YouTube to cinemas. The movie is based on Parsons' own Backrooms web series, a sci-fi horror found footage centered on a strange, seemingly endless complex of rooms containing architectural anomalies and strange life forms. Hey, that was my high school nickname. One keystone of the series is Async Research Institute, an organization with scientists investigating this extra-dimensional space. The series itself was inspired by a creepypasta. Hey, my other high school nickname. If you don't know the term, creepypasta is basically the modern term for urban legends shared around the internet. One of the most famous examples would be Slender Man. Not my high school nickname. I was a big boy back then. The Backrooms creepypasta has its origins in an anonymous 4chan post on May 12, 2019. You can think of 4chan as a big anonymous collection of message boards with all the highs and lows that come with mass unfiltered anonymous posting. Sometimes you get Backrooms, sometimes you get... This particular post was made on a paranormal-themed board. It displayed this image of a deserted, fluorescent-lit corridor along with this description. If you're not careful and you no-clip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the back rooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at maximum hum buzz, and approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in. God save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it sure as hell has heard you. The post so resonated with people that the urban legend, or creepypasta, spread like wildfire, with other users sharing their own fictional accounts of the back rooms. The lore expanded to include multiple floors or levels and various entities. These discussions reached far beyond 4chan to dedicated subreddits, Discord servers, wikis, TikTok, YouTube, and more. The cultural footprint went far. Dan Erickson, creator of Severance, even named Backrooms as an influence on the show, and you can definitely see it. If you're curious about the true origins of the photo, one of the Discord servers did some investigation and actually found it. Here's an archive of a page from March 2nd, 2003, a blog post chronicling the renovation of a building in Oshkosh, Wisconsin to be the site of an RC car racing facility, Revolution Raceway. Though it's since transferred ownership from Hobbytown to John's Hobbies, it is still open today. You can pay them a visit. Just try not to no-clip yourself into the back rooms. Or if you do, make sure to have a camera so you can send me the footage and I can exploit it for profit. Did I say that last part out loud? Now let's talk about the movie. It takes place in 1990. The Async Research Institute views footage from one of their researchers. He was investigating the back rooms when he was separated from the group. The corridors were filled with various strange things. Pirate-related decor, furniture sticking out of the walls. Running through the endless rooms, he called for help. Something was chasing him. He didn't get a good look at it, but whatever it is, gets him. To understand what it is, we first have to meet our main characters. Furniture store owner Clark and his therapist Mary, played by Chiwetel Ejiofor and Renata Reinsve. Both are dealing with their own traumas that are slowly unveiled throughout the movie. Clark is recently divorced and struggling with alcoholism. He refuses to take any responsibility for the divorce and harbors a lot of resentment for his ex-wife. She got to go to law school, while he has to manage a furniture store to pay the bills, including her tuition, a job requiring various humiliations like dressing up as a pirate for a commercial on local TV, a job which acts as a daily reminder he's failed to achieve his dream of becoming an architect. And what about the therapist, Mary? She sells tapes on TV with a motivational program all about opening the window within. Do you ever feel like you're living behind glass watching life happen? Time to open that window and become the author of your own design. Turns out it isn't just a metaphor. As a child, her mother struggled with some form of mental illness, which led to extreme agoraphobia. She covered up the windows and never went outside, turning herself and Mary into prisoners. These traumas will play key roles in the ending and the movie's underlying meaning. One day, Clark finds a hidden door in the basement of that furniture store, a wall you can simply phase through, like that Treehouse of Horror episode of The Simpsons where Homer goes through the wall and turns 3D. I'm somewhere where I don't know where I am! It takes Clark to the back rooms. He explores the endless maze, finding so many weird things. A bunch of furniture piled up, a backwards stop sign, a pot sign, chairs, a cardboard cutout of a caveman with a cassette player attached, playing greetings in many different languages. Later, we'll see similar cutouts used as bait by Async to capture backroom life forms. So it seems they were deliberately placed by them as a lure. We even see wires attached, likely leading to one of their encampments. Nearby, Clark also finds a bag from the Async researcher who went missing in the movie's opening. Clark finds shoes sticking out of the ground, a throne similar to the one he used in his pirate commercial, and he catches a glimpse of an entity, the same one that killed the researcher. Clark runs out of the back rooms. We also get a glimpse of Mark Duplass's character Phil, an Async researcher, watching Clark on the camera feeds. By the time Clark sees his therapist Mary again, he's done a lot of exploring, enough to map out a large swath of the rooms, though he's barely scratched the surface. He tells her all about it, explaining it this way: it's like a big office building that doesn't make sense. Like if you described a dog to someone who'd never seen one before, then asked them to draw it, they might get some things right, but it would be off. The devil is in the details. Of course, she doesn't believe him, so he's going to prove it to her. He recruits his commercial film crew, Bobby and Kat, which felt very Better Call Saul, automatic bonus points, and has them enter the back rooms with him, camera in hand. We get another found footage-esque segment. Bobby is captured by the entity, Clark and Kat get separated, and the life form gets him too. Though first, he finds a dark room with a Christmas tree, alongside a guy in a wheelchair with a lamp and a lady who creepily runs toward him while patting her own head. Is that what Christmas is like? I celebrated Hanukkah growing up and I was always jealous of the other kids, but if that's Christmas, people patting their own heads, call me the Grinch, because I'm good. Also, to clarify, he's not sitting in the wheelchair. He kind of is the wheelchair, like he's melded with it. It's no surprise these sequences, exploring the back rooms, are the highlights of the movie. The back rooms so resonated online because they unlocked a new form of terror. Uncanny Valley typically applies to something like a CGI or robotic human that gets close but not all the way to realism. Instead, it's slightly off and therefore uncanny. Backrooms accomplishes the same feeling for an entire place. Visually, it's unsettling. Then, to put characters in there and imagine what it'd be like to visit the place unlocks more terrors. It would be so easy to get lost. Sure, there are landmarks, like a particular pile of furniture, but that requires mapping or pure memorization. There's no compass, no sun, and no sense of progress. It's how I feel playing Metroidvanias. The place also raises terrifying questions. The pale imitation of reality implies a designer, someone powerful enough to create this place. Who or what are they? Or perhaps worse, there is no designer, but instead, reality has simply glitched, broken somehow. Can reality do that? Can it break me too? Can I ever go back? Something I also appreciated is how the movie takes its time with the exploration of the back rooms. To accomplish that sense of uncanniness, it has to approach reality and get close enough for it to feel just a little off. In part, it does that by taking its time. The place is massive, possibly infinite. In an age of shrinking attention spans, it'd be tempting to montage Clark's journey through the rooms. Instead, the sequences are given enough room to breathe as we follow his every mundane step. After an unspecified amount of time passes, Mary gets an ominous message on her answering machine from Clark. I open the window. I won't be coming back. Good to know you can get service down there. Can you hear me now? Good. Mary goes looking for Clark at the furniture store, where she finds a stack of mail outside. Clearly some days have gone by. She heads to the basement and enters the back rooms. She finds the usual strange things, but something new too, a sign of Clark's madness. He's created a mural of his findings in the complex. We see drawings of houses labeled 1, 2, 3, and so on, each getting smaller, a reference to the levels of the backrooms, which we'll understand shortly. Images of men in hazmat suits. He's likely caught a glimpse of Async researchers. The most prominent image? A large pirate on a throne lifting a figure up toward a window. Clark shows up. We hear the entity approaching, and Clark knocks Mary unconscious with a sleeper hold. And we enter ending explained territory. There's a flashback to Mary's mother's institutionalization. We cut to a shot of their house with the covered up windows, and the camera pans down, revealing another version of the house, as though there are many versions of the same house stacked on top of each other. But each subsequent version, each lower level, has less detail. Objects go missing, and there's more distortion. Objects sink into the floors and walls. Finally, we reach the level containing Clark and Mary. He has her tied to a chair at a dinner table. He tells her what he's learned, or at least believes he's learned about this place. Before knocking her out, he told her that this place is every place that ever was. What he meant is that it builds or remembers things from our world, but the more times it remembers them, the less it does. Based on what we saw when the camera panned down, and that mural showing that house counting down, getting smaller with each version, the implication is that the backrooms mimic reality, but it has many levels, and the lower you go, the less accurate the imitation gets. At least that was my interpretation. It even remembers people, but down here, they're distorted like everything else. They might have extra eyes or noses, and not all in exactly the right spots. They do appear alive, but barely. Clark has rounded up a few of them. The man in the wheelchair with a lamp, the red-haired woman, and a man in a striped shirt. Clark demonstrates how they don't feel anything by stabbing the man in the neck. He doesn't react. Clark envies them in a way. They have no thought, pain, ego, or fear. They simply exist. The best part? You can eat them. He pulls a few chunks out of the man's stomach and puts them on their plates. The chunks resemble the sort of stuffing you'd find in furniture, but stickier and gooier. Presumably that's how he's been surviving. We all wanted to taste it, right? No, just me? Okay. He opens the fridge to reveal Kat's severed head. Seems she was not very cooperative. But he will allow Mary to go if she does what he needs her to do. Tell him that he didn't do anything wrong. They role-play the memory of his wife, the night she kicked him out of the house. First, he sets the scene, turns off the lights, and wheelchair lamp man reflexively turns on his own small lamp. Then Clark scalps the red-haired woman and puts her hair on Mary's so she more closely resembles his wife. Then the role-play. He came home late and broke a glass. He's sorry, but not that sorry. I mean, he wanted a few beers, and it's his right. He pays for everything, her school, etc. But instead of giving him what he wants, Mary tells him the truth. Your wife left you because you can't take responsibility for anything. You always blame someone else for all your problems. YouTube video flops, it's the algorithm's fault. He asks her how he can change. How can he learn to take responsibility? And she doesn't know. She tried, but it's not up to her. She can't save anyone. He doesn't think he wants to change. He likes it here. For the first time in a long time, he feels like he's where he's supposed to be. She tells him to stay then. Just let me go. He agrees to do it. He starts to cut her restraints. Then it shows up. The life form that's been causing all sorts of problems. And we finally see it. A misremembered form of Clark himself, based on his pirate persona from the commercial, except it's very tall as the offspring from Alien Romulus, because it's played by the same guy, really carving out a niche in Hollywood, Robert Bobrowski, a 7'7" basketball player. Clark assures his pirate alter ego, it's okay, Mary was just leaving, and everything's cool, she says we don't need to change. The pirate picks him up and takes a big bite out of him, presumably enough to kill him. Mary runs, and in an extended chase sequence, we see more of the back rooms. We see a whole neighborhood, home fronts sticking out of the walls, and even a street between them. We see a sort of in-between room, like one of those hotels with windows looking into the interior, where you can see all the other rooms stretching down to the lobby, except here, no lobby. Just an endless pit. The kind Star Wars loves to put under every walkway, and of course, just like Star Wars, no railings. Eventually, running upstairs, she reaches a backrooms version of the furniture store. Must be one of the higher levels because it's pretty close to the original. This is where we see one of the caveman cutouts attached to gas canisters. The pirate gets to her, gets on top of her, and she fights back with a chunk of concrete. She and her mom made handprints in the concrete outside their house when they moved in, and she kept her own handprint as a souvenir once they tore the place down and broke the concrete. Now, she takes that chunk of childhood trauma and smashes the pirate's head with it. During the chase, by the way, she stumbled into that caveman cutout, setting off the canisters. The gas knocks out the pirate while she manages to escape through a narrow space. Very narrow, like that part in Inception. She bumps into some Async researchers who knock her out with that gas and bring her to a facility. They take her through the halls. She sees one room filled with caveman cutouts, one where the pirate is on an operating table, likely there to be dissected and studied. They take her to an interrogation room, where she meets Mark Duplass's character, Phil. He asks some questions like how she got into the back rooms, and answers some, but not all, of her questions. He tells her how Async used to make MRI machines before they found. He doesn't finish the sentence, but we get the idea. Somehow, they stumbled upon the back rooms. In the YouTube series, the back rooms are discovered by the Async Research Institute during Project KV-31, an attempt to solve future storage and housing shortages using a machine called the Low Proximity Magnetic Distortion System. The machine eventually creates the Threshold, a doorway into the back rooms, which Async calls the Complex. Now, it's Phil's job to research this place. He goes in there every day and just tries to find out a little bit more. More and more, he's convinced that nothing in our lifetime or all of recorded history means more than this. But they don't understand it. She wants to know what's going to happen to her. Will they let her go? The decision is not up to Phil. He attempts to redirect the conversation back to the back rooms, a word, by the way, they never actually use in the movie. He says there are doors opening everywhere, but they don't know why or what's connecting them, and they don't know how to stop them. With Mary's fate ambiguous, the camera shows us various distorted rooms relevant to Mary: her house, a bookstore with a display about her, then a room with distorted telephone poles with missing person flyers for Kat and Bobby, finally a distorted interrogation room with a distorted Mary. So, what does it all mean? Let's start with Mary. The final shot of that warped version of her is ominous and off-putting, but doesn't tell us the fate of the real Mary. It just tells us that the back rooms have created a misremembered copy of her, what the YouTube series refers to as a still life. And in the movie's credits, the three we met in the dinner party scene are officially named Bearded Still Life, Redheaded Still Life, and Archibald Leland Sutter Still Life, which are three different lamp company names combined to create the wheelchair lamp guy's name. Now, as far as we know, the existence of a still life version of Mary in the back rooms has no impact on the real world Mary. It seems her fate is entirely up to Async and or her ability to escape Async. At the same time, perhaps a sequel will reveal there is some psychological or psychic impact to having a messed up copy of yourself in another realm. I would ask my brother, but I'm pretty sure he is the messed up copy, so I'd have to find the original first. How about Clark? Similarly, Pirate Clark is a misremembered version of him. But why does she get a mildly distorted version of herself in a chair, and he gets a badass pirate with a peg leg, one that bleeds blood instead of styrofoam like the beard guy? My interpretation is that the human psyche can have an impact on how the copy gets made. Clark is filled with rage at his own inadequacy and the perceived slights of his wife and everyone around him. That is perfectly encapsulated by his pirate costume, where he's forced to put on a humiliating show that spits in the face of his dreams. If that bitterness is his overriding operating system, then perhaps when the backrooms remember him, it creates a rageful monster. Perhaps when Pirate Clark finds the real Clark, he doesn't kill him at first because he senses kinship in him. But once Clark is freed of the guilt, when Mary tells him he doesn't need to change, once that rage dissipates, Pirate Clark no longer senses that kinship. Or it could be as simple as Clark got in its way when it took a step toward Mary, so it ate him. He was hungry. Part of what makes the Backrooms so creepy is the sense that they are absurd and beyond human comprehension. So I think it's most successful when the still lifes exist on the edge of understanding. Maybe you can sort of grasp them if you squint a little, but not quite. It's like Phil. Twice he expressed a need to understand just a little more. Quote, "Every day I go in there and I just try to find out even a little bit more." Then a couple of minutes later, we all want the same thing here. We just want to find out even a little bit more. That manic but never satiated need to understand, that is the Backrooms. But this is ending explained, and explaining that there is no explanation is not very satisfying. So what does Kane Parsons say about the nature of the Backrooms? He told USA Today, "The Backrooms are not a simulation or anything digital, and it is not some kind of purgatory. Why do I feel like we're talking about Lost right now?" Instead, Parsons says the Backrooms are simply a force of nature. Quote, "It's not like a damnation. It's not like you have a weight on your soul and you did something wrong and so therefore the Backrooms consumes you. It's that reality broke and it messed up. A real, tangible, solid entity that is not a psychic phenomenon or a shared dream or anything that gets too magical. As I see it, it's the real-world equivalent of glitching into Minus World in Super Mario Bros. It's a level that isn't meant to exist, but if you slide through the wall just right, then go down the leftmost warp pipe, the game doesn't know what to do and just glitches a looping version of Stage 7 too. Or if you get to level 256 in Pac-Man and the game crashes because it was never programmed to go that far, and the board turns into total nonsense. Whatever engine creates reality, whether it's some form of string theory, a god, or something else, whatever mechanism it is, it screwed up something and spit out this bizarre, never-ending funhouse mirror of everything else. So we learn a little about the mechanics of the Backrooms, and Parsons provides some hints about its fundamental nature. What does it all mean in the context of this movie? Honestly, one of my nitpicks would be how on its sleeve it wears its themes. Therapy almost feels like a cheat code for character development, because it is sort of the real-world equivalent of character development. It's where you hash out the subtext of your life. But in a story, it can be narratively unsatisfying. And in addition to the therapy scenes, Mary's solo scenes are generally focused on either her tapes or her specific childhood trauma. In both cases, it feels like too much attention paid directly to the character's flaws rather than weaving those flaws into fully realized daily lives, where the flaws organically come out, interrupt, and interfere. At the same time, both performances are strong, especially Ejiofor, just because so much is asked of him. Those performances elevate and in some ways save those scenes from feeling quite cheesy, especially the roleplay session where they do therapy by Mary acting as his wife and replaying the argument that broke the camel's back leading to their divorce. But, digging into the subtext. First, Clark. He refuses to acknowledge his own flaws, and instead blames everybody else, to the point where he meets a Clark that effectively represents his worst cannibalistic self, and he doesn't run screaming, but instead tries to befriend it. Mary's therapy is all about opening the window within, and that mural displays Pirate Clark holding a man up to a window. I presume that man is Clark. He calls Mary to say he opened the window. To him, this is a positive development. Rather than face his problems and the memories of his mistakes, he lives in a world where mistakes are erased because memories are erased, or at best distorted. It's all about escape because he envies the things that feel nothing. But he finds that feeling and thinking nothing is easier said than done. He needs to play act at redemption. He needs to see his wife telling him he did nothing wrong, and Mary with a still life wig will have to do. Of course, that'll never work if you don't acknowledge the bad stuff inside you. If you don't deal with it, it'll eat you alive. It's a metaphor. We all have a 7'7" Romanian basketball player dressed up as a pirate inside us, and if you scalp someone to put a wig on a therapist, he'll eat you. I think that's the moral.
Perhaps There is no moral to this story.
Exactly! It's just a bunch of stuff that happened.
For Clark, his refusal to change is also manifested in his belief that he can tame the backrooms. It's already arrogant to believe you can bend the real world to your will, and that's a world based on rules, laws of physics, etc. He attempts to control Mary, to force her into his play of absolution, and in addition, he enters this realm beyond human comprehension, then believes he can train the still lifes, live symbiotically with them, and make a home there. That is the peak of arrogance. How about Mary? As part of her program, she talks about how we all get trapped in loops with habits and behaviors that keep us walking in circles, reaching for the same solutions over and over again. That resonates with the structure of the backrooms in a sense. Each place is remembered again and again in many layers. Then, of course, psychologically, Mary and Clark are both trapped in loops. Clark in his blame everyone for his problems routine, and Mary, she tries to help others open the window within, but she still hasn't opened her own window. She's still that little girl trapped in her home. We see it in her fixation on that handprint, holding on to the past. She doesn't just keep it on the mantle, she carries it around with her. She pointedly stares at it after watching an airing of her commercial on the window within, as though to say, you aren't taking your own advice. While speaking to a woman at a small gathering, she doesn't pay attention to her. Instead, her attention is drawn to a mother and daughter in the background. She's thinking about her and her own mother, while we hear a segment of her program about taking back the life you want to be living, unburdened by traumas of the past. By choosing to stay in the back rooms to embrace his routine of outward blame, Clark is stuck. Mary goes a different way. She tries to escape. When she attacks the pirate with that handprint, the physical manifestation of her childhood trauma, it shatters, as though to say she's freeing herself from the past, the memories of her trauma. This is directly after breaking a specific loop. She's been trying to help Clark, but in the previous scene, before the pirate shows up, she decides that she can't help him. She says, I can't save anyone, which I took to mean a combination of, I can't save anyone until I save myself, and I can't save anyone who doesn't want saving. And perhaps too much of her identity has been tied into this need to save others. So maybe it's time to let go of that a little. She tells Clark to stay, but let her go. Then, unfortunately, Async grabs her, so she's physically stuck or possibly dead if they decide she's seen too much, but at least you've unburdened yourself from that childhood trauma. Except there is also that version of you in the back rooms. It's an unsettling final image which to some degree undercuts the emotional catharsis, perhaps to say, you never move on entirely. Well, sucks to be you. Shouldn't have tried to save Clark. That's what you get for caring. The loop theme continues to the final frames, because even Phil is stuck in a loop that takes him nowhere. He says that he enters the back rooms hoping to understand it just a little bit more every day, but he never grasps it and likely never will, unless he searches Backrooms Ending Explained on YouTube. Like I said, I did not love how the subtext was handled. I don't mind the backrooms being used in part as a metaphor to explore some aspect of the human psyche, but I would have preferred it be done more subtly. Otherwise, it risks undercutting the sense of the backrooms as something beyond human comprehension. It goes from cosmic-grade horror to, oh, it's just a metaphor. It doesn't diminish all the way to that point, but there was a degree of it for me. I'm also torn on Clark's insane turn at the end. There were seeds for it, and we see a couple of steps in that direction. He already seems a bit obsessed and off-kilter when he recruits his film crew, but that's a far cry from murder and eating styrofoam people, styro-cannibalism they call it. After appreciating the movie's slower pace, it was jarring to skip so much. At the same time, I get it. At a certain point, we shift firmly to Mary's point of view, and for her, it is jarring. Clark has snapped. Skipping the insane transitionary phase allows us to feel more of her journey at this point, but I wonder if there was a better way to handle the balancing act of perspectives. Imagine Jack's deterioration of The Shining, but in the backrooms. Ultimately, this movie is at its best when it's just exploring those rooms, especially when it's in found footage mode. Early on, it lets us know there's something lurking in there. So on top of all the reasons the place feels weird and unsettling, we're constantly dreading the moment when the other shoe drops, when whatever is lurking will appear. Every sign of life adds to that foreboding sense. When Bobby goes down that slanted corridor and finds piles of clothes, including a copy of his own anti-apartheid shirt, and he says it stinks down there. Smell implies chemistry, maybe even biology. Suddenly, it doesn't feel like just another room. It feels like a creature's den. Perhaps it collects clothing, perhaps from its victims, including a caveman cutout. We find one of those in the pile. In my theater, people were so on edge waiting for the reveal of something alive, they gasped at the sight of the Christmas room, before we even saw lamp guy or head patting lady, because I think it raised everyone's suspicion. This feels like a place where we might meet someone. Overall, I love the production design and pacing of Backrooms. When it aimed for a vibe, it successfully achieved it. When it aimed for character development and deeper meaning, not as much, but both were saved to some extent by the strong performances. In any case, the movie definitely made me curious to check out the YouTube series, and I'm excited for whatever Parsons does next.